The moon was high in the sky, silver light spilling over the narrow path that led deep into the forest. The hunter's bare feet made no sound as he crept between the shadows of tall trees. Ahead of him, the young woman walked slowly, her bright wrapper swaying gently with each step. Her beauty was so striking, even in the moonlight, that it made the hunter's heart beat faster. Her skin glowed like polished bronze, her long braids swung down her back, and her laughter, soft and almost musical, floated through the night air. But there was something strange. She wasn't taking the road toward the village. She was heading deeper into the wild, where no one lived. The hunter followed at a distance, his eyes fixed on her graceful figure. She stopped at a small clearing, where the moonlight was strongest. Then, slowly, she turned her head to the side. What he saw froze him where he stood. Her face was no longer beautiful. It had twisted into something hideous. Her skin rippled as if snakes moved under it. Her eyes glowed an unnatural red. When she opened her mouth, her teeth were no longer human. And then, she began to shed her skin. The hunter gasped and took a step back, but the dry leaves crunched beneath his feet. He stopped, turned, and stared straight at him. In the heart of Okoro village, life flowed as smoothly as the clear river that cut through its center. The air was filled with the smell of roasting yam and palm oil from cooking fires. Children played in the dusty streets, their laughter echoing between the mud brick huts. Every evening, elders gathered under the great iroko tree, sharing stories and kola nuts, while the younger ones listened wide-eyed, eager to hear tales of spirits, hunters, and old battles. And at the center of the village's admiration stood Adizwa. No one in Okoro had ever seen a girl like her. Her beauty was the kind that silenced a room. When she walked to the river, women paused in their washing to watch her. Men stumbled over their words when she looked their way. Even children stood in awe, unsure whether to run to her or stare. Her skin was flawless, her eyes deep and dark like the night sky after rain. Her hair, always neatly braided, shimmered in the sunlight. But what made her most unforgettable was her voice. It was soft yet powerful, like the first song of the morning birds. Adizwa was polite too, always greeting elders with a bow, always smiling warmly at strangers. People often said, "Our village is blessed. Even the spirits must envy us for having her here." Yet, as much as people admired her, no one truly knew her. She never stayed too long in the market. She never joined other women at the river for gossip. And she always returned home before the sun dipped too low. At least, that's what everyone thought. Okoro was a peaceful place, but it was surrounded by thick forests known for strange happenings. Hunters sometimes spoke of hearing footsteps when they were alone, or seeing glowing eyes in the dark. Farmers whispered about shadows moving at the edge of their fields. The elders dismissed such stories as foolish talk, warning everyone not to wander too far at night. One man who never ignored such talk was Adakunal, the village's youngest hunter. He was tall, with a lean frame hardened from years of trekking through the forest. His eyes were sharp, always searching for danger. Though young, he had the instincts of an old hunter, and he took pride in protecting the village from unseen threats. One market day, Adakunal first noticed Adizwa closely. She had come to buy palm oil, and he happened to be passing by. She stood apart from the crowd, her head slightly bowed, but her beauty still shone so brightly that even the noisy traders seemed to lower their voices when she walked past. Adakunal had heard all the praise about her beauty, but seeing her up close was something else entirely. She smiled faintly at the trader, paid for her goods, and left quickly. It was the swiftness of her departure that caught Adakunal's attention, not the beauty itself. Over the next few days he noticed it again. She would appear in the village, stay only a short while, and then vanish before sunset. Sometimes she carried no goods, no water, nothing at all. Just walked as though she had somewhere urgent to be. It was a quiet curiosity at first, but hunters live on instincts. And Adakunal's instincts whispered that Adizwa was not like everyone else. One evening, as the sky turned gold, Adakunal stood near the edge of the village, cleaning his bow. That's when he saw her again, walking swiftly but not toward her home. Instead, she took a narrow path that led toward the forest. He frowned. No woman in the village went that way after dark. It was an unspoken rule. The path led past the river bend, deep into a part of the forest that hunters only entered with great caution. He almost called out to her but stopped. Curiosity now burned inside him. Why would someone like Adizwa, admired by everyone, sneak off toward the forest at night? He told himself there was probably nothing to it. Maybe she had family in a nearby hamlet. Maybe she liked the quiet of the woods. But even as he tried to convince himself, his eyes followed her until she disappeared among the trees. The next day he kept thinking about it. And when the sun began to sink again, he made a decision. He would follow her. Not to harm her, not to embarrass her. Only to find out the truth. Because in Okoro, beauty could be a blessing. But sometimes, it could also hide a curse. And that night, Adekunle would take the first step toward uncovering a truth no one in the village was ready to hear. The sun was already melting into the horizon when Adekunle began his quiet watch. He sat under the tall palm near the market, pretending to repair the leather strap on his quiver. His eyes, however, stayed fixed on the main path. The village was slowly settling into its evening rhythm. Women hurried home with baskets balanced on their heads, children scampered indoors, and the smell of dinner fires drifted in the air. The chatter of the market dimmed until only the voices of a few late traders remained. And then there she was. Adizwa appeared, walking with the same calm grace as always, a small woven bag hanging from her arm. Her wrapper was tighter than usual, and her scarf was drawn low over her forehead, shadowing her face. She didn't greet anyone this time. She didn't stop for palm oil or greet the elders under the irako tree. She just kept walking, taking the same narrow path toward the forest. Adekunle waited until she was nearly out of sight before rising. He slung his quiver over his shoulder, adjusted his bow, and slipped after her. His bare feet made almost no sound on the dusty path. The first stretch of the path was familiar, cornfields on one side, the small river bend on the other. But soon the crops thinned out, replaced by wild grass and thick clusters of trees. The shadows deepened. Adizwa moved quickly, not looking back once. Her steps were steady, as if she knew exactly where she was going. Adekunle slowed his pace. This part of the forest was known for strange sounds at night, whispers in the wind, branches that cracked when nothing seemed to move. Even the bravest hunters avoided it unless in a group. But Adizwa pressed on. She finally reached a clearing he didn't recognize. The moonlight fell full on her now, silvering her wrapper. She stopped, dropped her woven bag on the ground, and began to hum. The sound was unlike anything Adekunle had ever heard. It wasn't the sweet, soft voice that charmed the village. This humming was deeper, almost like two voices blending into one. The hairs on his neck rose. Then she began to move, slow, deliberate steps in a circle around the clearing. She touched the ground with her fingers and whispered words too soft to hear. Adekunle crouched low behind a tree, straining to see. Suddenly Adizwa froze. Her head tilted slightly, as though listening to something in the wind. And then she turned her face upward. Her eyes were different. In the moonlight they gleamed, not with the warmth the villagers loved, but with a strange reddish glow. Adekunle's heartbeat quickened. He had heard tales of forest spirits taking human form, but they were always just stories told to frighten children. Now, watching her, he wasn't so sure. He shifted his weight to get a better look. Crunch! A dry twig broke under his foot. Adizwa's head snapped around. Her eyes locked on the trees where he hid. For a moment, silence swallowed the clearing. No crickets, no rustling leaves. Only the sound of Adekunle's own heartbeat in his ears. And then she smiled. It was not the gentle, graceful smile of Okoro's beauty. It was sharp, knowing, and it made his stomach tighten. She took one slow step toward his hiding place. Adekunle's first thought was to run. But his hunter's instinct told him that sudden movement might only draw her closer, or worse, provoke her into doing something he wasn't ready to face. He crouched lower, his back pressed against the tree trunk, hoping the darkness would hide him. But Adizwa kept walking toward him. Her steps were slow, deliberate, almost silent. The sound of her feet on the dry leaves was like the hiss of a snake. "Adakunnel," she called softly. His heart skipped a beat. She knew his name. "How?" he whispered under his breath. "You've been following me," she continued, her voice low but carrying clearly through the clearing. "Why?" He hesitated. If he lied, she might know. If he told the truth, he wasn't sure what would happen. "I was worried for your safety," he said, keeping his tone steady. "This path is dangerous after sunset." Adizwa tilted her head, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Then she laughed, a sound that began light and sweet, but shifted quickly into something deeper, almost mocking. "I can take care of myself," she said. "But now that you're here, you might as well see." Before he could react, she dropped to her knees in the center of the clearing and began to hum again. This time the melody was louder, stronger, and it made the air feel heavy. Adakunnel's hands tightened around his bow. He didn't like this. The forest seemed to lean closer, as though it too was listening. Then something impossible happened. From the ground beneath her, a pale mist began to rise. It swirled around her body, curling like smoke. The hum grew deeper, and her skin began to ripple. Adakunnel's breath caught. Before his eyes, Adizwa's beauty started to peel away like dried paint. Her smooth bronze skin faded into something grayish, almost scaly. Her long braids loosened, falling away to reveal coarse, uneven hair. And her mouth stretched wider than any human's should, revealing jagged teeth. Adakunnel's stomach churned. He took a small step backward. Snap! Another branch broke under his heel. Adizwa's head snapped toward him, but this time she didn't smile. She hissed, an animalistic sound that sent a shiver down his spine. "You should not have come here," she said, her voice echoing strangely, as if two people spoke at once. Adakunnel's mind raced. He could try to run, but the path back to the village was long and dark. If she was faster than him, and he had a strong feeling she was, he wouldn't make it. She began to move toward him again, her bare feet gliding silently over the ground, her strange form becoming clearer with each step. Adakunnel felt his courage slipping. This was no ordinary woman. This was something else entirely. And then, a branch above them cracked loudly, and both their heads jerked upward. Something else was in the trees. The crack in the branches was sharp, like a warning. Adakunnel's eyes darted upward, scanning the dark tangle of leaves. Something or someone was up there. Adizwa's head tilted back, her glowing eyes narrowing. She hissed again, but this time not at him. Slowly, she backed toward the center of the clearing, as if preparing for whatever was above. Then it dropped. A dark figure landed on the ground between them, crouching low before rising to its full height. It was an old man, at least he looked old, dressed in animal skins, his hair tangled with feathers. Around his neck hung a string of charms carved from bone and wood. His eyes, however, were not those of a frail elder. They were sharp, blazing with the confidence of someone who had seen and defeated many things in the wild. "Adakunnel," the man said without turning. "Step back." Adakunnel obeyed instinctively, moving closer to the trees. He recognized this man, Pa Oren, the reclusive forest hermit who rarely came near the village. People whispered that he could speak to spirits and that the forest itself obeyed him. Adizwa's face twisted into a sneer. "Old man," she said in that double-layered voice, "this is not your affair." "It became my affair the moment you stepped into my hunting ground," Pa Oren replied, his voice calm but firm. She laughed, a low, unsettling sound, and took a step toward him. The mist around her thickened, curling upward like grasping fingers. Pa Oren raised one hand, and a gust of wind swept through the clearing, scattering the mist. His other hand held a small gourd, sealed with palm fronds. Atakanal watched, barely breathing. He had heard of gourds like that, spirit traps used to bind things that didn't belong in the human world. "You should not be here, child of ash," Pa Oren said. "Return to the place you came from." Adizwa's form shimmered between her beautiful disguise and the monstrous shape Atakanal had seen earlier. "And if I refuse?" she asked, her voice rising. "Then you will leave in pieces." With a shriek, she lunged forward, moving faster than Atakanal could follow. But Pa Oren slammed the gourd onto the ground and muttered words so quickly that Atakanal couldn't understand them. The earth shuddered. For a moment, Atakanal thought the old man had won. Adizwa staggered, her monstrous form flickering. But then she regained her footing, her red eyes locking on Atakanal again. "He's mine," she snarled. Before Pa Oren could react, she spun away from him and sprinted toward Atakanal. Her speed was terrifying. He barely had time to raise his bow before she was almost on him. And then, out of nowhere, Pa Oren's voice roared through the clearing. "Atakanal, run!" Atakanal didn't think. He just ran. The forest seemed to close in on him as he dashed between the trees. His heart pounding so loudly he could barely hear the thud of his own footsteps. The branches clawed at his skin, and the roots tried to trip him, but fear gave him speed. Behind him something moved fast. Too fast. Her breathing was no longer human. It was a guttural rasp closing in. Swoosh. A flash of movement streaked past him. Pa Oren landed directly in Adizwa's path, slamming the base of his staff into the earth. A ring of white ash burst outward like a wave, forcing her to halt. She hissed at him, pacing just outside the ash circle. "You can't keep him forever, old man." Pa Oren's tone was ice. "He's not yours to keep." Atakanal backed away, still breathing hard. What is she?" The old man didn't take his eyes off her as he answered. "She is not the woman you think. That thing is called airy age, the beauty that feeds on life." Atakanal's skin prickled. "Feeds?" Pa Oren nodded grimly. "She takes the form of the most beautiful woman to lure her prey. But when night falls, she shows her true self. She drains the life from those she charms slowly, so no one suspects until it's too late." Atakanal's stomach turned. He thought of all the men in the village who admired her, and of how none of them seemed sick or dying yet. "How did she come to the village?" he asked. Pa Oren's jaw tightened. "Many years ago, hunters from Okoro killed a great leopard spirit without knowing it was a guardian of the forest. In revenge, the forest sent her. She is not just one creature. She carries the spirit of vengeance." Atakanal's breath caught. "So, she's here to harm the whole village." The old man's eyes darkened. "Not just harm. She will take them all. Slowly. And when she's done, there will be nothing left of Okoro but silence." Atakanal's mind raced. He had to warn the elders. He had to protect the people. But as he looked at Adizwa, her beauty flickering over that hideous true form, he realized something chilling. She wasn't staring at Pa Oren anymore. She was staring at him. "You followed me," she said softly. "That makes you different from the rest. I want you first." The old man stepped between them again, chanting under his breath. The ash circle pulsed faintly. Atakanal's voice was hoarse. "Pa Oren, how do we stop her?" Pa Oren's chanting paused for just a moment. "We can't. Not without the leopard's lost heart." Atakanal frowned. "The what?" Before the old man could answer, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, snuffing out the ash circle. Adizwa smiled. The moment the ash circle broke, Adizwa moved like lightning. Atakanal barely had time to raise his bow before she was upon them. Pa Oren thrust his staff forward, but she sidestepped it with inhuman speed and slammed her palm into his chest. The old man flew backward, hitting a tree so hard the bark splintered. His staff clattered to the ground. "Pa Oren!" Atakanal shouted, but the hermit groaned weakly, unable to stand. Adizwa turned her attention to Atakanal. Her beauty mask shimmered faintly in the moonlight, but it couldn't fully hide the monstrous gleam in her eyes. She walked toward him slowly, savoring the moment. "You followed me because you thought you could uncover my secret," she said, her voice smooth now, almost human again. "But now you are my secret." Adekunle backed away, his heel brushing against the old man's fallen staff. His fingers twitched toward it, but she noticed immediately. "Go ahead," she said softly. "Pick it up. Try to fight me." Something in her tone made his stomach knot. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. She wanted him to fight like a cat wanting the mouse to struggle before the kill. Adekunle's mind raced. If what Pa Oren said was true, killing her outright wouldn't work. She would keep coming back unless the leopard's lost heart was found. But where could it be? And how much time did they have before she turned her attention to the whole village? The air around them grew colder. Shadows deepened, stretching unnaturally. Adekunle realized she was doing something, calling on whatever dark force she served. Behind her, the mist thickened again, but this time it wasn't just swirling aimlessly. It was forming shapes, faces, dozens of faces. Adekunle's chest tightened. He recognized some of them, men who had vanished from nearby villages in past years. Their eyes were dull, their mouths open in silent cries. "They are with me forever," Adizwa whispered. "And soon you will be too." She took one more step toward him. Adekunle gritted his teeth, snatched Pa Oren's staff from the ground, and swung it hard. The carved charms clinked together as it connected with her shoulder. A piercing scream shattered the air, not from pain but from fury. She stumbled back, her monstrous form flashing fully into view for a heartbeat. "A bold move," she hissed. "But useless." Before he could swing again, a burst of wind knocked the staff from his hands. She was suddenly in front of him, her clawed fingers brushing his cheek. "You're mine," she murmured. From the darkness beyond the clearing came the urgent tolling of the village drum. Adizwa froze. Her eyes narrowed. "They're calling the warriors," she said. And just like that, she vanished into the mist, leaving only the sound of the drum echoing through the forest. Adekunle dropped to his knees, his breath ragged. Pa Oren crawled toward him, his voice trembling. "She's moving now," the old man said. "The village will be her hunting ground before dawn." The drumbeats rolled through the night like thunder, carrying an urgency that every villager understood. They were the Ogun alert, a warning of danger that called warriors and hunters to gather at once. Adekunle helped Pa Oren to his feet, his mind already racing. "She's heading for the village," Adekunle said. "If we go back now, maybe we can." Pa Oren shook his head sharply. "You can't fight her without the leopard's heart. Steel and arrows will only slow her for moments." Adekunle clenched his fists. "Then tell me where it is." The old man's voice dropped to a gravelly whisper. "When the hunters killed the guardian leopard, they burned its body in shame. But the heart was taken by a trickster spirit. It hides it in the deepest part of the forest, in a cave that breathes like a living thing. That is where you must go." Adekunle glanced toward the direction of the drumbeats. "While I'm searching, she'll be attacking my people." Pa Oren's eyes hardened. "If you don't go, there will be no people left to protect." Those words struck deep. Adekunle's fear gave way to determination. He grabbed his bow, slung his quiver over his back, and nodded. "Lead me." The two moved quickly, leaving the clearing and plunging deeper into the forest than Adekunle had ever dared. The trees grew thicker here, their branches weaving into a roof that let in almost no moonlight. The ground was soft, almost like flesh underfoot. They passed strange carvings on tree trunks, faces twisted in laughter, eyes that seemed to follow them. Whispers brushed Adekunle's ears, but when he turned, there was nothing there. At last, they reached a narrow gorge, and beyond it, a dark opening in the earth. It was indeed breathing. Each exhale sent a warm, foul wind across their faces. "That's it," Pa Oren said. "The trickster's lair." Adekunle peered into the darkness. "What's inside?" The old man's gaze was grim. Illusions. Ways. Every step will try to turn you back. But remember, if you see something you desire, it is not real. Only the heart matters. They stepped inside, and the darkness swallowed them whole. The walls pulsed faintly, like the inside of a giant beast. Almost immediately, Adacunnel heard his mother's voice. "Adacunnel, my son, come home." He froze. His mother had died when he was a boy. But her voice, her real voice, was echoing through the tunnel. Paoran grabbed his arm. "Don't listen. It's the trickster." The air shimmered, and suddenly Adacunnel saw her. His mother, smiling, arms open. The smell of her cooking drifted toward him. His steps faltered. The longing in his chest was so sharp it almost hurt. Then Paoran's voice cut through. "Your mother would want the village safe. Move." Gritting his teeth, Adacunnel tore his gaze away and pushed forward. The illusion shattered, leaving only damp stone walls. They passed more visions. Bags of gold, the applause of the whole village, Adizwa in her most beautiful form smiling at him. But each time, Adacunnel forced himself to keep moving. At the tunnel's end, they found a stone altar, and on it lay a small object wrapped in leopard skin. It pulsed faintly, as if alive. "The heart," Paoran whispered. Adacunnel reached for it, but before his fingers touched the leopard skin, the shadows behind the altar shifted. A figure stepped forward. It was tall and thin, with a grin that stretched far too wide. Its eyes were two swirling pools of color, and its voice was like wind and laughter mixed together. "You came for my treasure," the trickster spirit said, tilting its head. "What will you give me in return?" Adacunnel's grip on his bow tightened. "The heart doesn't belong to you," he said. His voice steady despite the thundering of his pulse. "It belongs to the guardian leopard, and to the people it protected." The trickster spirit chuckled, the sound bouncing unnaturally around the cavern. "Belong. Nothing in this forest truly belongs to anyone. Everything is borrowed, until someone clever enough takes it." Paoran stepped forward, his tone sharp. "Enough games, spirit. That heart is the only thing keeping the airy age from devouring an entire village. Give it to us." The trickster's grin widened. "Oh, I will, but only if the hunter passes my test." Adacunnel's eyes narrowed. "What kind of test?" The spirit's swirling eyes brightened. "One choice. I will show you two paths. One will save your village, but you will never leave this cave alive. The other will let you escape unharmed, but your village will be gone before dawn." Adacunnel's stomach clenched. "That's not a fair choice." "It's the only choice," the trickster said lightly. Paoran's hand touched Adacunnel's shoulder. "Remember, tricksters thrive on the obvious. There is always another way." Adacunnel took a deep breath. "Show me the paths." The spirit snapped its fingers, and the air shimmered. To his left, Adacunnel saw the village bathed in moonlight, peaceful, unharmed, but he was lying in the center of the square, lifeless. To his right, he saw himself alive, walking free through the forest, but behind him, Okaro burned, its cries fading into silence. The images pulled at him, each one feeling solid and real. But then he remembered Paoran's warning. If you see something you desire, it is not real. The trickster's smile faltered slightly as Adacunnel lowered his bow and said, "I choose neither." The spirit blinked. "Neither." Adacunnel stepped forward. "Your visions are lies. You can't kill me with a choice that doesn't exist. I came for the leopard's heart, and I'm leaving with it, alive and with my village safe." The cavern trembled. The trickster's grin returned, but now it was sharper, almost proud. "Clever hunter. You know the rules of the game." With a lazy wave of its hand, the spirit made the illusions vanish. The altar stood bare, the leopard's heart pulsing steadily. "Take it," the trickster said. "But remember, victory always comes at a price." Adacunnel snatched the leopard's heart, wrapped in its skin, and turned to leave with Paoran. By the time they reached the forest edge, the drumbeats from the village were frantic. Shadows were moving through the huts. Adizwa was there. Iran. In the village square, chaos reigned. Warriors swung spears at a blur of movement that danced just out of reach. Adizwa, in her monstrous form, laughed as she dodged their strikes, her claws flashing. Adakunnel didn't hesitate. He raised the leopard's heart high and shouted, "Adizwa!" She turned and froze. Her glowing eyes locked on the bundle in his hands. "You!" she hissed, stepping back. Adakunnel unwrapped the skin, and the heart pulsed brighter. A warm wind swirled through the square, carrying the scent of wild grass and rain. Pa Oren's voice rang out, "Guardian of the forest, reclaim your strength." The heart burst into golden light, shooting upward. The glow took shape. Muscular limbs, spotted fur, gleaming eyes. The great leopard spirit returned. It landed between Adakunnel and Adizwa, its roar shaking the ground. Adizwa shrieked and tried to flee, but the leopard was faster. In a single bound it pounced, its massive paw pressing her to the earth. The mist around her shattered, and her beauty flickered once, twice, before melting away completely. What remained was a twisted gray figure that dissolved into dust beneath the leopard's weight. The spirit turned to Adakunnel, bowing its great head. "You have restored balance." Then, with a final roar, it vanished into the night. The village was silent for a long moment. Then the cheers began, warriors slapping their spears on the ground, elders raising their hands in blessing, children running to touch Adakunnel's arm as if to be sure he was real. Pa Oren smiled faintly. "You've done what no one else could. Remember this night, hunter. Courage and wisdom together can defeat even the oldest of curses." Adakunnel looked around at his people, safe and whole. The stars above seemed brighter than before. And though he would never forget the face of the beauty who hid a monster's heart, he would also never forget the lesson the forest had taught him. True worth is not in the face you see, but in the spirit you carry.